She came with a smile and a camera. She said she was here to tell Africa's story. But what nobody knew was that she wasn't filming a documentary. She was mapping secrets. She wasn't hunting truth. She was hunting targets. It started quietly. A woman with fair skin, clean shoes, and a French accent landed at Ouagadougou International Airport with a tourist visa and a press badge clipped to her shirt. She told customs officials she was a freelance journalist here to understand Burkina Faso's security challenges and share local voices with the world. She smiled, spoke in fluent French, and said she admired President Ibrahim Traoré's courage. "It's rare to see young African leaders who stand up to the West," she said. People believed her. Why wouldn't they? She acted polite. She offered water to taxi drivers. She handed out pens to school kids. She bought tea in village markets and took pictures of sunsets and goats. But behind the lens of her camera, she was filming something else. Over the next few weeks, the beautiful journalist visited places most reporters didn't go. She stayed near military camps, walked near rail lines, and asked local guards about transport routes and mine shipments. When one soldier joked, "You ask more questions than our own commander," the woman laughed and replied, "That's how journalists learn." At night, she stayed in a guest house on the edge of the city. Nobody ever saw her drink or party. But they noticed something strange. She made international calls every night, never using local SIM cards. She didn't post her stories online. She didn't tag anyone. She claimed everything would be released in a special European report. And yet there were no articles, no bylines, no reports published in France. At first, locals thought she was just eccentric. But one night when she was seen near a restricted radio tower, things changed. Burkinabe intelligence began to watch quietly. They followed her movements. They cloned her SIM without touching her phone. They logged her emails, texts, and voice messages. What they found was not journalism. It was espionage. And when President Traoré saw the evidence himself, he didn't call for a raid. He did something smarter. He invited the spy to ask her questions directly on camera in front of the nation. News cameras rolled quietly as the chairs were set. A small press conference had been announced in Ouagadougou, hosted by the Office of the Presidency. But unlike usual, there were no press kits, no printed questions, no reporters from CNN, BBC, or RFI, just a few hand-picked local journalists, and one name added to the guest list at the very last minute: Ms. Juliette Morel, freelance journalist, France. She arrived alone, dressed in a stylish beige suit, a white blouse, and the same press badge she'd shown at the airport weeks earlier. No tripod, no cameraman, just her shoulder bag, notebook, and a slight smirk on her face. She had no idea what was coming. As she entered the compound, she greeted guards like she belonged there. "I'm here for the president's press briefing," she said confidently. A soldier nodded and pointed her forward. But behind the uniform, the soldier's eyes were watching closely. Inside, the room was quiet, maybe too quiet. Cameras were already rolling. A microphone stood at the center. There were only 6 chairs for journalists, lined in a half circle. Juliette sat down casually, opened her notebook, and looked around. No one smiled at her. No one greeted her. It felt cold. But she brushed it off. She thought it was normal. Maybe they were nervous around a European journalist. Then the door opened, and President Ibrahim Traoré stepped in. Calm, straight-backed, dressed not in a suit, but in his military fatigues. He didn't look tired. He didn't look rushed. He looked ready. Juliette stood up and extended her hand. "Mr. President, it's an honor. I was hoping—" Traoré shook her hand firmly and replied, "You've been asking many questions about us, Morel. Today I will answer them, but first I have a few of my own." Juliette blinked. Was this a trap? She smiled nervously, pretending to be relaxed. "Of course, that's what interviews are for." But this wasn't going to be a normal interview because Ibrahim Traoré hadn't invited a journalist. He had invited a spy. And the next few minutes would reveal just how deep the betrayal went. The questions began. The camera's red light blinked softly. 6 journalists sat in silence, notebooks open, hands still. In the middle stood President Ibrahim Traoré, calm, composed, and holding no papers. Across from him, Juliette Morel adjusted her collar. She was used to being in control of interviews. But this time, something felt different. Traoré wasn't smiling. He wasn't introducing policies or reading statements. He was studying her. "Madame Morel," Traoré began, "you've been in our country for 23 days, correct?" "Yes, Mr. President," Juliette replied, steadying her voice. "I've been gathering stories, filming locals, trying to understand." "Understand what?" Juliette hesitated. "The challenges your people face. Security, infrastructure, foreign relations." Traoré nodded slowly, then turned to the side. A soldier stepped forward, holding a sealed folder. "You have visited 9 military-adjacent zones," Traoré continued. "You have recorded 3 strategic locations disguised as interviews with guards." Juliette blinked. The room got colder. "I'm a journalist," she said. "That's what we do. We go where the stories are." Traoré stepped closer. "And is it also normal for journalists to send encrypted emails at 2 a.m. to servers registered in Abidjan?" Juliette froze. One of the other journalists turned her head, shocked. The soldier opened the folder and held up a photo. Juliette at night, laptop open, encrypted mail client on screen. Then another. Juliette standing outside a military radio tower, phone in hand. And another. Screenshots of messages sent to a man known to Burkina's intelligence, a French military contractor working under diplomatic cover in West Africa. Juliette's face lost color. "I can explain." "Please do," Traoré said. But Juliette had no words. She wasn't under pressure from questions anymore. She was under investigation. Traoré looked to the cameras. "This woman says she came to understand our people. But in truth, she came to record our weak points, map our movements, and send our secrets abroad. She came not to tell our story, but to write her own." And then Traoré said, "Let the people decide if this is journalism or betrayal." The silence in that room was louder than thunder. Juliette Morel had come to expose Africa, but now it was Africa exposing her. Juliette Morel's hand trembled as she reached for her bag. The room was still silent, the cameras still rolling, but the air had changed. What started as a simple press conference had become something else, a public trial, a quiet takedown, and she was the target. "Ms. Morel," President Traoré said calmly, "do you deny these photos, the messages, the recordings?" Juliette opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She was sweating now, not because of the heat, but because the plan, whatever it had been, was falling apart. A second soldier walked in, carrying a black laptop. It was Juliette's, confiscated the night before without her even noticing. Traoré nodded. The screen was switched on. "Let us show you something," he said to the room. The projector lit up the wall. There it was. A real-time map of Burkina Faso with pins on oil routes, mine locations, and 2 unmarked military storage depots, found in a folder labeled "For Review, Côte d'Ivoire Client," Traoré said. Gasps echoed around the room. Juliette shook her head slowly. "I didn't mean... It was just notes. I didn't send..." "Then explain this," Traoré interrupted. He raised a paper with one printed email. "Target's movements predictable. Palace security thin near Westgate can be monitored for future asset placement." Juliette's face turned pale. "No, that's not. It's fake." "It was sent from your encrypted mail at 2:17 a.m. from a guest house in Zone 3. We don't forge evidence, Ms. Morel. We collect it." The local journalists stared in disbelief. Some whispered prayers. Others just stared at the beautiful European woman in the room who once walked with confidence, now shaking, her lies unraveling thread by thread. She had come here with a plan. But she had underestimated the country. She had underestimated its intelligence. And most of all, she had underestimated the man standing across from her. President Traoré walked slowly back to the microphone. He wasn't angry. He didn't shout. He simply looked into the camera and said, "This is what they send us. Not aid, not apologies, but spies with cameras who call themselves journalists. They think we will smile and stay quiet, but that time is over." Then he turned to Juliet one last time. "You came for stories. Now you are the story." And just like that, Traoré gave the order. "Escort her out." Two guards stepped forward. Juliette Morel didn't resist. She just lowered her head and walked out the way she came in, only this time she wasn't holding the camera. She was inside the frame. By sunset, the press room was empty. The cameras were packed, the chairs folded. But the moment of confrontation between President Ibrahim Traoré and Juliette Morel had already left the room. It was now everywhere. The first video clip appeared on social media just 1 hour after the event. It showed Traoré asking calmly, "Do you call this journalism or betrayal?" Then came the images, the laptop screen, the military maps, the intercepted emails, and finally the beautiful French woman walking out of the room in silence, flanked by two guards. The internet exploded. In Burkina Faso, people gathered in cafes and homes to replay the footage over and over. One man shouted, "He caught a spy live on TV." A grandmother in a village near Kaya whispered, "We've waited a long time to see a president stand tall like this." Across West Africa, the video spread like fire. TikTok, WhatsApp, Facebook. Everywhere, people watched Traoré flip the script. "They came to study us, but they got studied. This is how you handle them with facts, not fear." In Senegal, students painted a mural of Traoré with the words, "Africa has eyes now." In Ghana, a viral tweet read, "He didn't raise his voice, but he raised the standard." In France, however, the reaction was different. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a cold statement. "We are reviewing the situation and expect fair treatment for all citizens." But they said nothing about the evidence. They said nothing about the maps or the emails or the connection to Abidjan, because they couldn't. Meanwhile, inside Burkina Faso, Juliette Morel was under formal arrest, not for being a journalist, but for unauthorized surveillance and national security breaches. She was moved to a secured facility outside the capital. But it wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every microphone that had been used to gather secrets, every handshake that came with a hidden condition, every photo taken with smiling faces and double meanings. President Traoré didn't make another speech. He didn't need to. The world had already heard what he said in that room. "You came for stories, now you are the story." And as the video continued to go viral, one thing became clear across Africa. This wasn't just about catching one spy. It was about standing up to all of them. The video hit the internet before the press room was even empty. It started with one clip just 40 seconds long. President Ibrahim Traoré standing calmly in front of cameras saying, "You came for stories, now you are the story." And then the guards taking Juliette Morel, the so-called French journalist, out of the room in silence. No shouting, no drama, just truth. That was all it took. By evening, the video had already reached millions. On TikTok, people in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, and Mali reposted it with captions like, "This is how you protect your country. He exposed her without touching her." Africa is awake. In Burkina Faso, shops stopped playing music. They played the press conference instead. Young people gathered in tea corners, replaying it on phones. Old men nodded silently at their radios. One woman in the market said, "They used to come with guns. Now they come with cameras." On TV, it was even bigger. National news played the clip over and over. But not just the walkout. They showed everything. The photos of Juliette outside military areas, the laptop with maps of sensitive zones, the email to a contact in Abidjan titled "Palace Entry Point Low Visibility." Nobody could deny it, not even the French government. But still, they tried. In Paris, they released a short statement. We are following the situation and will ensure our citizen is treated fairly. But they didn't mention the evidence. They didn't deny it. They didn't even try to explain it because they couldn't. Meanwhile, in West Africa, the feeling was different. This wasn't just about catching a spy. It was about finally seeing the trap and breaking it. Across borders, people shared the same message. Enough. Juliette Morel, the woman who came with a smile and a camera, was now being held in a military safe house. No interviews, no press passes, no audience. She asked to speak to a lawyer from the French embassy. But Traoré gave his answer publicly. We have a bigger case to answer and it belongs to Africa. And just like that, the woman who once came to expose others was now the one being exposed in front of the whole world. The press conference was over. Juliette Morel was gone, not out of the country, but inside a military detention site, waiting for trial. The world had watched it happen. The video had made it to every corner of the continent. But President Ibrahim Traoré stayed silent. For 3 days, he didn't speak a word to the press. He didn't need to because the evidence spoke for itself. But on the 4th day, he walked out of the palace, not to stand behind a podium, not to speak to foreign reporters, but to address his people. The setting was simple, a school courtyard. Children sat on the floor. Farmers stood at the back, traders, drivers, students, and even soldiers. They all came. No one held a script. No one handed him notes. He stood in the sun and said, "They have been watching us for years, not to help us, but to control what we say, what we build, what we dream. They sent one woman with a camera, but it wasn't a camera. It was a weapon pointed at our future." He looked around the crowd and continued, "That woman said she was a journalist, but her memory card carried more maps than interviews, more base locations than quotes, more targets than truth. She didn't come to tell our story. She came to steal it." The people stood in silence. Some nodded. Some cried. And then he said something that would echo across Africa. "To the next one who tries this, the next person who comes smiling with soft words and sharp wires hidden in their bag, don't mistake our silence for blindness. We see you now." That one line became a movement. On walls in Ouagadougou, it was painted, "We see you now." In TikTok videos across Ghana and Nigeria, "We see you now." And in university halls from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, "We see you now." No arrests were made beyond Juliette Morel. No embassies were stormed. There was no chaos. Only a quiet message delivered with calm fire. "You taught us how to hold a camera. Now we know how to aim it back." That's how it ended. No gunfire, no shouting. Just one woman caught in her own game, and a continent reminded of its power. Because this time, Africa didn't stay quiet.